Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to the UFO podcast special with yours truly, CM Kozeman, presenting. 7 people in the chat tonight, kind of a slow night. I hope you're all doing all right. Peter's channel says, I have arrived. Turan says, your profile is fire. Bleepnik says, goat. Thank you. I have halved or cut down by a third my coffee consumption per day. And it's given me a fresh look at life. I can no longer be as energetic, but the slowness has its own charm too. 10 people watching. When 5 minutes or so pass, we will start. We will resume with our reading of the incredible UFO stories from the 1890s. I'm just setting up my reader now. Last off, we were near Michigan in the 1890s. In 1897, a lot of airship reports were being filed, but also people were making fun of these things, and they were kind of like people knew what was about. At one stage, they were used as political satire, maybe to make fun of a railroad. So now we're going to see where these sightings are going to go. And there were also cases where people were listing the names of the famous locals who saw it just to convince the news that this thing happened. And actually at the end, one of the airships had crashed, and something like a wheel and some wire were seen, and it was no more airship, or no, that airship. I'm just trying to find where we were. I hope you're doing all right, by the way. MGO says, hey, hey, hey. 10 people, it's the middle of the week. But I think it's important to keep tempo, because one thing I really hate the most is beginning something and not seeing it to the end. Cauliflower says, hello, hello, hello. I've also been busy painting. Let me show you. I've been carrying these little canvas around with a bag of acrylics, and this was an older one. This is actually oil, not acrylics, but like pure oil painting. And it's got this nice shape. And following this, I also made this, which is actually Russian acrylics. There's a brand called St. Petersburg. And I actually painted this in a coffee house, at a cafe. But it looks more oily than the oil painting itself. Obviously, there's a learning curve. But I just love painting these angels. Now I get some more small canvases like this, and the next time I go to a cafe, I'll paint another one. Peter's channel says, your paintings make Da Vinci. No, come on. I can never hold a candle to a name like Da Vinci, or even names like Max Ernst and Picasso and Matisse. There's some real good painters out there. But thanks for thinking so highly of me. Baby Squid says, hooray, I managed to catch one of these streams live. Well, glad you caught it. Lord Grunwalder says, I think at long last the UFO videos have arrived. When will they be out? Well, actually, I was planning to turn this series into a documentary kind of video with music and stuff. And actually, I had asked Lord Grunwalder to identify me a cool and kitsch song, which turned out to be Particles by William. That's with a V, not a W. And the song goes tan 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 hop Bugs Bunny, hey, hop Bugs Bunny. I was gonna edit that into an intro, but I think it's just easier live streaming this. Plus, now I can take donations. So if anybody is feeling generous, just hit it up. If not, please support me on Patreon. You know the drill. There's also the merch store and buy me a coffee. Cauliflower says hayırlı Ramazanlar. Yes, happy Ramadan if you're fasting. Thank you for all your nice feelings and thoughts. 815 says hi, hello. Peter's channel, have you watched Invincible? No, I haven't. Okay, 7 minutes, let's begin. All right, now let me remember where we last were. Last we left off, the airship had crashed and the news were going around. As always, now I will be focusing mostly on the reading, so if you got any unrelated questions, I may not be able to answer them. But if you have questions about the topic at hand, and if you let it through with a super chat, I'd be happy to answer. Lots of heart emojis coming in. Thank you. Thing is, last round I had this funny thing where I would put on one fancy article of clothing for every donation. This time around, I'm actually very sleepy, and I feel a little under the weather. So maybe I'll entertain you somehow, but I can't guarantee a costume experience. Okay, let's go. Let's go. Now the airship had crashed, but in the Kalamazoo, Michigan Gazette, once again it was like airship or no. The strange body that passed over the city Monday evening was taken for many to be an airship and was seen by a proprietor of the Gazette. So people saw this thing again. Airship or whatever it might be, there is some strange skylarking about the heavens that has been seen by thousands of people. Now, about the origins of this phenomena, I used to think maybe it was hoaxes, especially with the debris they were finding. It looked like a unmanned dirigible with lights on it. The object was first heard of several weeks ago in western Nebraska, then in Kansas, Iowa, and Illinois, now in Michigan. So it's kind of moving eastward. In Sunday, object of the same description passed over South Bend and Niles. It was about a half a mile high. One thing certain, it goes through space like a rocket. So it's too fast. In Lansing, they also report the airship again, with blue, red, and green lights moving rapidly northeast. Can you read the text, by the way? 15 people watching. This is from the Lansing, Michigan State Republican Gazette. The cool thing about the US is they really pioneered media in the way we understand it today. All of these small towns had a newspaper, and the news reports were very lively, very dynamic. As you saw in the last episode, sometimes they made fun of people or used it for humor, so it wasn't just cut and dry news. In Adrian, Michigan, at last, that airship had been seen. A Clodier saw it, displaying three colored lights. I think it was red, blue, and green again. He wasn't looking through a smoke glass either. So maybe this is a hint that he was sober or he hadn't smoked anything, if you know what I mean. 12 people watching. In Benton Harbor, people were still seeing the airship. A report came from Galesburg, Michigan, to the effect that the vessel exploded over Pavilion Township, and portions of electric appliances and the point of the propeller were found. And in Chicago, a policeman came and found a tissue paper balloon made out of red, white, and blue paper. Not green, though. So, yeah, some looks like there were some shenanigans about. It's usually a mix of all things, like some weird, maybe natural thing happens, then there's a media frenzy, and then people start feeding into this frenzy with fake reports and actual forgeries. So it's a strange mixture of truth, fiction, and half fiction. Lord Grunwalder says these are better with a dark atmosphere and vibe. Well, maybe true, but this is the atmosphere you're getting today. 10 people watching. Where's everybody from? I have mostly Turkish followers here tonight. Let's do a roll call and see where everybody's from. The most general explanation of the object is that it's some kind of meteor or shooting star, but unlike them, in changing color and direction, meteors inevitably have a downward course. The mysterious object of last evening was not of human origin, was plainly evidenced by the speed at which it was moving against the wind. Unlisted is from the US. Peter's channel is from Brazil. Hello, hello, hello. Maria Magdalena from Bulgaria. Hello, Maria. Baby Squid is from the UK. Hello to you. I'm really lucky to have you all with me. So, despite all the forgeries, something weird seems to be afoot because a lot of different newspapers are reporting it. It's not like today where every newspaper is owned by the same company. Or maybe they just are going with the story to increase sales. In Bay City, Michigan, the airship was no more. It was said to have exploded in Michigan. A dull explosion was heard by two soldiers. They had an excited and sleepless night, and they found a large coil of heavy wire. 3 men shingling a barn in Comstock Township affirmed that upon resuming work, they found the completed work covered with minute fragments, which had in some cases penetrated the shingles. So this was like shrapnel bursting. And I think this is where we had left off the last time round. Then after the explosion, it starts getting intense. In Kalamazoo, the Gazette reports strange moving lights in the heavens, a toy balloon said to have been one of the objects which created much comment. Reputed airship, seen at Candleville, Indiana, and Sturgis. These must be interesting times for astronomers, as not a single night passes that some new moving object does not make its appearance. Even right here in Kalamazoo, there were two airships, comets, balloons, or some other light carrying object bobbing around in the heavens. Hundreds of people saw it. Some people thought it was a toy balloon, but it didn't appear the next night. Looks like somebody's just floating a balloon around at this point. Its color varied and would entirely disappear for a brief period of time and then appear brighter even than ever in a slightly different place, probably the result of invisible clouds at night. Interesting, these all happen at night, and it must be an experience to just wait for the airship at night, just magically watch it together with family or friends. Then a broken wheel was dug up where the UFO fell to the earth. People thought it was a meteor, but in the morning, Mr. Park and his brother Benjamin dug it up and found it to be a large wheel made out of aluminum and a turbine in shape. First time he ever heard of a meteor having wheels. He will keep the wheel as a memento. It might be seen at any time at his farm in Penfield. I wish there was a picture of this. That would have cleared it up, but looks like some sort of forgery. Okay, then at Grand Rapids, Michigan, an artist secured a picture of an airship, which unfortunately doesn't reach us. In Benton Harbor, a couple of truth-telling citizens swear they saw the UFO. Then in the New York Times, okay. So now this is interesting because these guys are the city people are once again poking fun at the so quote unquote rednecks in the back country. The airship, which all the Western papers and some of the Eastern ones now are giving benefit of doubts, is visible nightly to correspondents in all parts of Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, Indiana, and Iowa. The aerial Voyager is evidently a Mahatma of high development, for he exists in a dozen places at the same time and has a different appearance and does different things in each one of them. So, yeah, clearly the New Yorkers are cynical as ever. It is lamentable to observe that everywhere he goes, he violates the US navigation laws in relation to lights. Once again, the city people are cynical, skeptical of lesser developed states, but they're also weirdly attached to rules. Usually, the captain of this new aircraft shows only one light. Most often, it's blue, white, but occasionally red. If this were the worst of his offenses, it might be injured. But the ignorance he displays in the matter of side lights is simply criminal. This alludes to, I think, the nautical tradition of having red light on port and green on starboard, or maybe the other way around. Some conversation going around. What if biblically accurate angels being UFOs? Maybe. So the New Yorkers actually threaten these so-called UFOs because they're disrespecting navigation laws, where it was actually quite illegal to have different colored lights. Because remember, the US has an extensive system of channels, and of course, in the Great Lakes region, lake navigation is a big deal. So it was rigidly enforced to have like red and green lights. If the airship owner persists, his vessel will run into low, or his vessel will run into itself sooner or later. So they're making fun of it. Like they're obviously skeptical of the thing being in several places at once, and soon it will be in several pieces instead of several places. So the Battle Creek Daily Journal is actually tired of this shit. They say, brevity, some wag sent up a paper balloon last night, which floated over the city and attracted general attention. It had nothing the appearance of the aerial wonder that was seen on the previous evenings, however. So something happened which was spectacular and weird, and now charlatans are moving in. That airship causes as much stir as it takes to make a batch of bread from a gold medal flour. So you need to stir it a lot. Turan says everybody asks where the UFO is. Nobody asks how the UFO is. Very true. Back to Kalamazoo, 10 people, respectable citizens, saw the light again. Now there's a new version. Prairie Rondi wheel horses think they saw prosperity seeking a landing place. In a village called Schoolcraft, the UFO was seen traveling a mile a minute. That's it. Then, at the residence of a certain D.A. Lane, that airship was seen again. The red and green lights were distinct. No telescope was needed to see them. This is no hoax, and anybody doubting the statement can relate to these three prominent people: D.A. Lane, A.L. Thomas, or Reverend Richardson. Well, you see, you got to take them at their word. Oh. Sleep has crashed into me like a UFO hitting the ground. Lord Grunwalder says, imagine being a super advanced species bringing gifts, and the natives just give you a parking ticket because you have the wrong flashlights. Well, welcome to Earth. And these things are taking place in the 1890s. And okay, many countries around the world had laws and general order and even science and industry back then. But still, it's interesting to see how regulated the US was even back then. But the same thing that's responsible for the regulations is also responsible for, well, such rich reports. Oh. Boris Chonev says it's a hog wild world out there. Yeah. Then in the Michigan Saginaw Globe, they saw the airship again, 2 men, including a certain Captain Baskins. The thing with all these encounters is that the airship is sailing across the sky. It's not just particularly hovering over a place. It moves from one end of the sky to the other. It had, again, in Lansing, Michigan, it had red, blue, green lights, might have been taken for a star. So many reports that, I don't know, maybe some sort of weird ball lightning phenomenon was taking place. Who knows? In the Detroit, Michigan Free Press, many more Michigan citizens report having seen it. It was like a large balloon with 2 lights, witnessed by a large crowd. In Olivet, Michigan, they saw it again heading towards another town called Albion. By the way, this is like one of the last true ages of innocence in the US. Although it was still a very unequal place, this was before the First World War. It was the smack in the middle of that Gilded Age. Maybe one of those last moments where life was really full of color. Boris Chonev says, I remember Wilhelm Reich reporting seeing and even battling UFOs. Yeah, there's actually like in the contemporary day quite a big community of people who claim to have worked on secret UFO experiments, or there's even like some maniacs who say we were at Area 51, we crossed to another dimension, and we actually had like gun battles with aliens. And yeah, it's a rich cottage industry. In the Grand Rapids again, these are almost all on the same day, by the way, April 16th. Maybe it started with the 17th. No, it started with the 15th. Now it's one day later. Grand Rapids, Michigan, they say Reynolds had the pleasure of looking at the airship, but several people had the rare good fortune of being acquainted with the navigator. This is a really interesting one. The thing swooped down from the sky, and a half a dozen farmers immediately surrounded it. While they were examining the strange craft, a creature 9.5 feet in height clambered over the side and grew eloquent in an unknown tongue. One of the farmers extended his hand, but in the country the visitor comes from, this seemed to be an affront. The big alien swung one of his legs, and the farmer retired with a broken hip. Guy got kicked by a 9 feet tall alien, 3 meters tall alien. Now that's what I call a close encounter. Then the unknown sprang into his aerial craft, turned on some strange power, and the whole thing darted away. There is still no there is no still in the vicinity of Reynolds, so they say we're not making moonshine here. This wasn't a drunken hoax. And the sharp lookout is being kept for moonshiners. Yeah. So yeah, here's a cryptid or a UFO case for you guys to illustrate right here. And 15 people watching. Peter's channel says, we went to Area 51 and we got teleported to another dimension and we battled aliens in in Fixobrinto 1974A in huge intergalactic war. Yawn. Okay, moving on to April 17th. By the way, the alien was 9.5 feet tall and he had a musical language. Interesting. Another report of this strange close encounter. A strange man, if man he might be called, was in charge of the ship. He seemed to have plenty of clothes. He seemed to have no use for them because he was almost naked, almost suffering from heat. He was 9.5 feet tall. He had a musical language. He has a his language was like the repetitions of a bellowing, so almost like a chant. Yomaime. And he kicked a guy and broke his hip. He seemed to be trying to talk to people. People here are incredulous, so guess why? Once again, two consecutive reports of a close encounter. Oh God, I am just so sleepy. I'll tell you what, I'll reach the end of this chapter and I think I'll call it a night. I feel so like, I don't know, maybe some greater force doesn't want me to read this to end tonight, but yeah. Let's keep pushing through. Baby Squid says, hate to extend the hand of interstellar stellar friendship only to get a kick in the ass. In the Evening Telegram in Adrian, Michigan, Hudson is struck. The airship seen on Thursday night. Astronomer Trip called out, but the ship disappeared too quick for him. So they actually tried to get in touch with a real scientist here. Hudson never does anything by halves. That's the name of the town. Our people keep right in the swim. Consequently, the airship has struck the city. Last night, about 11 o'clock, 25 people worthy of belief were coming back from a supper party. And they saw the light in the sky. The knowledge of the discovery was imparted to the rest of the crowd. It was evidently the airship and seemed to be a cigar shaped object, one of the first cases that form is reported. Happened to be appeared to be 500 feet high, 8 to 10 feet, that's like 3-4 meters, maybe 5 meters in length. The spectators were so excited they woke up a local astronomer who tried to get a view of the airship, but before he could get his telescope in shape, the airship disappeared. Well, one that got away. Peter's channel says least horrible Zeppelin. ST Funkin says hi, CM Kozman. So in Saginaw now, they're convinced that the airship is a reality and passed over a valley in the morning, over 50 feet long. There was a red light at either end. Descriptions, it was 75 feet long, maybe 1/3 as wide. It's shown with a dull glow, as if there were lights on the upper side. It was too late in the morning to send messengers in the direction it went to. It had the appearance of a cloud, and it wasn't very bright, so kind of like the creature in Nope. When passing our town, it kept the course due north. The sources from which information comes are entirely authentic. There can be no doubt that the mysterious object, whatever it was, passed over the city. It was going at a terrific speed. And the principle on which it is constrained is. Sorry. The principle on which it's constructed is that of the parallel plane and it's operated by steam. Okay. So they kind of like already marked this down as a steampunk flying machine. In Battle Creek, a part of the UFO seems to have fallen northeast of the city, and it's been placed on exhibit at the exhibition of attorney Frank Culp's office. So these things are living relics too. All right, everybody. Imagine if they still existed for commercial purposes. I wonder what kind of UFO accounts people read for Nope. Alien from Area 51 says, how did they even find my car there? Was that your car? Okay, everybody. Normally these streams are an hour long, but I'm feeling extremely sleepy and it's sleep is calling me like sweet ambrosia. We made some more headway into the UFO story. At least we saw a close encounter and The ship keeps appearing over and over again. Aliens are making me fun sleepy. Yeah, they don't want the truth to get out, but I'll fight to the bitter end. He seemed to have plenty of heavy. We'll just read the aliens description once again and call it a night. So it's the same story, but the interesting description here is that the UFO pilots seem to have lots of heavy clothes, which look like the pelts of polar bear. He seemed to have no use for them, for he was almost naked, and he was 9.5 feet tall. Bizarre. And they talk to the farmers, and they say, from their excited manners, we are led to believe that no hoax exists. Lord Grunwalder says external enemies, maybe in reference to the UFO. Well, that is that for tonight. I am gonna call it a night. Lord Grunwalder says maybe they're calling a junkie an alien. Well, it's still a 9.5 feet tall, like 3 meters tall junkie who can kick your pelvis open. So be careful. I think I will try to illustrate this character. Very interesting. And probably the first encounter of the third kind in the USA. I really wonder who the guy with the broken hip was, like all these little details. They kind of appear magical and make you want to dig more into it. Alien says, "Stop, man. These are you're leaking my secrets. Yeah, man, your eyes are. I'm very sleepy. This is going to be a short one. Thanks for joining me, all 11 or 16 of you. It's been a lovely night. I am going to go to bed and sleep the most delicious, delectable nap. Thank you so much for your time. Good night, everybody. Have lots of fun wherever you are. Remember, if you like these reports, you can download them as an ebook from my Patreon. Good night, everybody. I love you all.